Shock and disappointment of the loss of college football for 2020 for a number of teams and conferences out there is starting to hit home, especially in Oregon, where they are the reigning Pac-12 and a Rose Bowl champions. We got Ryan Winter on the line, of course, from 503 Super Chat. You can catch him right here on YouTube. Just again, that's 503 Super Chat. Ryan, how you doing today?
Great, man. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. And again, for a program that's on a roll, in regards to recruiting, results on the field that have been increasing by the year and certainly tapped out in regards to a Pac-12 championship and a Rose Bowl win as well. This has to be even more disappointing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's traumatic for everybody, especially the seniors. There was a boatload of seniors that had come back after, you said, the program's on the rise again and going to a Pac-12 championship, going to a Rose Bowl, and there were still guys on that team that, had another chance, had one more year of eligibility, could have flirted with going to the NFL, decided to come back, and for them to have this canceled on them is just traumatic. It's tough times for everybody. I understand where they're going with it. I understand that it's for safety's sake, but a lot of disappointed fans for sure.
So, Ryan, hey, I've been talking ad nauseum about this for days and days and days ever since the decision came down. Well, that was only about a day ago from the Pac-12 and the Big 12. But in regards to my thoughts about the litigation, the aspect, the health and safety of the players, that could be debated. And I understand both sides of the argument, whether they're safer playing football in a semi-bubble, restricted by team activities and so forth, or whether they're in the general population of campus and so forth. That could be debated. The money aspect, the competition aspect, why different conferences are coming to different conclusions. Again, I've been talking about this. Would love to hear what's making sense to you and what's not making sense to you.
Well, you're right. I think the main thing is we should have some sort of transparency. There's so much money involved here, whether it comes from donors, whether it comes from TV money or anything else. There's a lot of investment into college football. And it feels like that those other three conferences, not to speak negative about it, but it does feel like that they're taking the money route a little bit more serious than the Pac-12 or the Big Ten. I think the Pac-12 and the Big Ten both looked at it from the legal side. They didn't want any part of the litigation long-term, like you were saying, and I think they really want to just err on the side of safety. I'm a high school teacher, and we've been postponed throughout the whole fall, and I think that they're just taking the page from that and trying to just play the safest play possible. The impact of it is massive, though. The Pac-12 talked about just last week doing a loan for each school, and the school could choose the amount at 3.75%, and they could choose it. It's a 10-year loan. They could choose the amount up $50 million up to $83 million. So they don't give out the exact numbers. I was trying to find out exactly what the football accounted for each school, and they don't exactly list those, but they're basically saying somewhere between 50 and 80 million per school is going to be the impact if they don't have them.
Ryan, it's been not that long. It seems like a long time, but it's not been that long since the Pac-12 was considered a strong, deep football conference. I think it's been overplayed over the last couple of years how much the conference has declined. I think the narrative has been much stronger than the actual performance on the field. I still think it's a deep conference, maybe missing some elite ready to play Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama at the top, possibly, but it's still a deep, strong conference in a lot of measurements. But financially, it has less to lose than the Big Ten per team, but it has more to lose in regards to where the stability of the conference is financially and in competition on the field. The latest figures that I saw had the Big Ten is making the most money per team at $55 million. The Pac-12 wasn't dead last, but it was like in this range with the ACC and the Big 12 in regards to those three, being close to 3, 4, and 5, and at about half as much money as the Big Ten teams were making. So as soon as this was announced by the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, I'm having a lot of Big Ten fans, and rightfully so, thinking, okay, if there's a successful season played by the other three conferences, what does this mean long-term for the Big Ten in terms of ramifications that it's not a serious football power, that players are going to run, recruits aren't going to want to come, and maybe the same thing for the Pac-12. What do you think the ramifications could be long-term?
Oh, I completely agree. I tend to think all options are on the table right now. I know you're seeing player involvement here as well. You're seeing with them with the We Are United movement. There's a lot of conversations right now. I tend to think a couple of years ago when they were trying to add, Texas, Oklahoma, try to make a power conference out here, 16 teams, kind of try to either abolish one of those conferences. Every year the narrative is there's got to be one conference that somebody throws dirt on from day one. And, historically that had been, a couple different conferences. The last 3 years, it's been the Pac-12. And, rightly so. The Pac-12 did slip a little bit, but the Pac-12 slipped because Oregon slipped. And the national narrative went, well, if Oregon doesn't win, then who else is out there? Washington was a really good team that year that they went. They just lost at the end, and they haven't had success in the playoffs. The Oregon's the only team that has won a playoff game against Florida State that year. But I think if the Pac-12 can break through, then they can start talking about that narrative. Very similar to the ACC. They just needed Clemson to win to give it some validity. Ramifications-wise for the money, though, is going to be tragic. And I tend to think that this could change conferences across the board. I think maybe you're seeing the Pac-12 and the Big Ten have some united. I think there's going to be some schools who are going to come off this thing and never, ever be able to recover from this hole that this year is going to create. And they might not be able to field football programs in the future.
And the other thing that seems to be evident is that the conferences rule everything. And we kind of knew that going into this, but this is brought to light that the conferences act independently. The NCAA has very little, if any, power, and it's been deteriorating throughout the years. And now really nothing that they've determined has been put into play. It's all determined by the conferences, and they act independently.
And now it feels like the NCAA is really, really sensitive about this player unification movement. If the players get some sort of a union that can back them up on this thing, I think that's the path that they don't want to go down. I think they're okay with the name, image, likeness coming in next year, but I think they're very scared of the idea of schools actually paying athletes or somehow giving them more than they're already given right now through their scholarships.
Got Ryan Winter on here. He's jumped on board with us a number of times to talk Pac-12 football and Oregon in particular. Even on vacation, you can see he's repping the green.
Of course.
The green and gold, of course. The Pac-12 and Rose Bowl champions, and unfortunately for another year going into 2021. I personally, Ryan, think that spring football's a myth. I just don't see where it logistically works out.
I agree. I could see, I've heard some people float some different ideas I really liked, maybe having some sort of a spring schedule, scrimmage schedule put together where you could have, the media cover it so you could still maybe generate some money off of the, advertisements. But no, I don't see any fans in the stands anytime soon, and I don't see any games anytime soon. I also tend to think it's going to affect basketball in the winter as well.
Yeah, as the Pac-12 has pushed all the games for the fall sports and the winter sports up to January 1st. So not only wiping out the fall sports season, but the entirety of the calendar year of 2020 in all sports. We got Ryan Winter on the line. You can catch him on 503 Super Chat right here on YouTube. And what I love about YouTube and online media in general is everybody's got their own little flavor. They're all their own little take on whatever they do. And we talk college football, and you guys do it a lot different than I do it. And that's what makes things great. For somebody that heads on over to what your YouTube channel is, Ryan, what are they going to find?
Well, the main thing I do is I just try to give a voice for Oregon. Lately I've been doing a lot of interviews, player interviews. I've interviewed about 40 different people related, close to the program, media, players. I really tried to get the players on as much as possible during the off season, just to kind of talk about their stories a little bit. Normally, though, during the week, I just talk about all the games. I do a video for the Ducks, I do a video for Pac-12, and I do a video for the National. Of course, we're always focused on the national narrative as well here. But, for the Ducks, I go to all the games. I go to the bowl games. I go to, the games. And I try to video as much as I can. It's a little hard now. I kind of feel like I'm having to go stealth mode. But I try to get a lot of different footage and try to just play a different perspective for people than you find on YouTube. Because a lot of times on YouTube, you just can't see really what we're trying to offer for a sports chat. So,
Ryan, enjoy your vacation. Thanks so much for taking a little time out to share with us here during a difficult time for all college football fans, but especially out there on the West Coast.
Absolutely, Mark. Cheers to you and then all our Ohio State friends out there. Hopefully we get to play again next year.